The cross-section of medulla at the level of olivary complex is most fascinating yet more complicated for the new ones trying to study the neuroanatomy. This is because it possesses the numerous nuclei of very important cranial nerves. The obvious features include the presence of the inferior medullary velum, which forms the roof of the fourth ventricle in the posterior part of the medulla. The central canal of the medulla continues as a fourth ventricle in the upper part of the medulla. The lateral wall contains inferior cerebellar peduncle, which connects medulla with the cerebellum. Among the descending pathways, the fibers of the corticospinal tract, they form the prominences in the anterior part in the form of a pyramid, and deep to these pyramids is the presence of the arcuate nuclei, which are believed to be descended pontine nuclei. These nuclei receive the corticopontine fibers and send the fibers to the cerebellum via anterior external arcuate fibers. Also present in the midline, there is arrangement of 3 tracts from behind forwards. The first one is the medial longitudinal fasciculus, which is present in the most posterior part. Ventral to this fasciculus is the presence of the tectospinal tract, which is highlighted in blue. And ventral to the tectospinal tract, there is medial lemniscus, which was formed by the decussation of the internal arcuate fibers, as we have seen in the previous sections of the sensory decussation. Lateral to these fiber tracts, there is the presence of the reticular formation, which contains interconnected nuclei and neurons concerned with our state of awakening, consciousness, and pain sensitization. Present deep in the reticular formation are the nuclei ambiguous on both sides, which send efferents to the 9th glossopharyngeal nerve, 10th vagus nerve, and the 11th spinal part of the accessory nerve. Now present anterior to this is the arrangement of olivary complex on both sides, which has 2 large nuclei in the form of inferior olivary nucleus. Because of this enlarged nuclei, the ventral surface of the medulla has an elevation in the form of olive just lateral to the pyramid. So it is produced by the underlying inferior olivary nucleus. Also present are the 2 accessory olivary nuclei. The one medial to the inferior olivary nucleus is the medial accessory olivary nucleus, and the one that is present dorsal to it is the dorsal accessory olivary nucleus. In the floor of the fourth ventricle, there is very important arrangement of the cranial nerve nuclei. Medial most is identified as the hypoglossal nucleus, concerned with the 12th hypoglossal nerve. From this nucleus, the hypoglossal nerve emerges on both sides and exits between the pyramid and the olive. Just lateral to the hypoglossal nucleus, there are 2 nuclei which are concerned with the vagus nerve. The medial one is the dorsal vagal nucleus, and lateral to it we have the nucleus of tractus solitarius. The fibers from the dorsal vagus nucleus, nucleus of tractus solitarius, and from the nucleus ambiguous, they all form the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve emerges from the side of the medulla between the inferior cerebellar peduncle and the olive. Now lateral to the vagal nuclei, we have 2 nuclei which are associated with the 8th cranial nerve. The medial one is the medial vestibular nucleus, and the lateral one is the inferior vestibular nucleus. The inferior vestibular nucleus is replaced by the lateral vestibular nucleus in the area of cross-section of medulla just inferior to the pons. Also present is the posterior cochlear nucleus in the posterior aspect of the inferior cerebellar peduncle, which is also associated with the 8th cranial nerve. Medial to the inferior cerebellar peduncle, there is spinal nucleus and tract of the trigeminal cranial nerve. Among the other ascending tracts, there is anterior spinocerebellar tract on the lateral aspect, and just medial to this spinocerebellar tract there is presence of the spinal lemniscus right here. And as we know, the spinal lemniscus is a structure fiber tract which is formed by the contribution from anterior spinothalamic tract, lateral spinothalamic tract, and spinotectal